This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person. This is about a system that no longer pretends to be temporary. For a long time, we were told that stability comes from rules, from markets, from diplomacy, from patience. But quietly, without a vote or an announcement, something else took over. A system where economic calm is no longer produced. It is enforced, where affordability doesn't emerge from balance. It emerges from pressure, from leverage, from control over a single physical variable that everything else quietly follows. You feel it before you can name it. In prices, in shortages, in the way distant decisions suddenly reach into ordinary life. This isn't chaos. It's order of a different kind. And once a system learns that force works faster than consent, it doesn't forget. If you want to understand why the ground feels less stable lately, stay with me. Because the reason isn't loud. It's structural, and it's already in motion. What actually controls the system now isn't ideology. It isn't leadership style. It isn't even policy. It's leverage. Specifically, control over the one input every other system depends on: transportation, food, manufacturing, heating, movement itself. When that input is cheap, everything feels calmer. When it isn't, nothing else matters. So power migrates away from parliaments, away from voters, away from institutions designed to deliberate, and toward whoever can touch supply directly. Not regulate it, not debate it, physically command it. This is the shift most people miss. The system no longer asks, what is legitimate? It asks, what works fastest? And the answer again and again is pressure. That pressure doesn't need public support. It doesn't need consensus. It just needs access. Once that logic takes hold, everything downstream adjusts to it, including the rules that used to slow it down. And that's where the real danger starts to come into focus. Because systems built on leverage don't stop expanding on their own. They move until something pushes back or breaks. Here's the part that makes this dangerous. This didn't arrive all at once. Before, control was indirect. Prices moved through markets. Supply responded to incentives. Instability was treated as a failure to be corrected. Now, control is blunt. Before, intervention was described as exceptional, temporary, reluctant. Now, it's procedural. Before, the question was how to stabilize systems. Now, the question is which systems are worth stabilizing at all? That shift didn't trigger alarms because it happened gradually, decision by decision, crisis by crisis, always framed as necessary. And that's how normalization works. The most consequential changes don't announce themselves. They arrive disguised as problem solving, as efficiency, as competence under pressure. But once a system learns it can bypass negotiation and go straight to enforcement, it stops investing in slower tools. Institutions atrophy, rules thin out, consent becomes optional. And what replaces them isn't chaos, it's something colder, something that functions right up until it doesn't. And that's when the first visible shock appears. Then it stopped being theoretical. A single decision triggered a measurable jolt, not in speeches, not in doctrine, in numbers. Supply changed. Prices reacted immediately. The system responded the way it had been trained to respond. Fast, decisive, unapologetic. What mattered wasn't legality or precedent or process. What mattered was that it worked. A massive flow of value shifted hands in a compressed window of time, enough to move markets, enough to prove a point. And that proof traveled, it told every other actor watching exactly what the new rules were. That access beats agreement, that force beats delay. That outcomes matter more than methods. This wasn't framed as a crisis. It was framed as competence, stability restored. Pressure relieved, mission accomplished. But here's the part that doesn't make the headlines. When a system solves a problem this way once, it doesn't see it as an exception. It sees a template, and templates don't stay isolated. They spread. Here's how the system actually works. Pressure is applied upstream, far from where most people live. Control is taken at the source. Not to manage consumption, but to dictate conditions. Once supply is physically secured, everything downstream adjusts automatically. Prices fall. Volatility smooths out. Political credit flows inward. The costs don't disappear. They're displaced. They land on places without leverage, on populations without options, on institutions that no longer have time to respond. This is the trade the system makes. Short-term calm in exchange for long-term dependency. Affordability now, fragility later. Those with access profit twice, first from control, then from reconstruction. Those without access absorb the damage quietly. Economic shock, political erosion, deferred collapse. And because the benefits are immediate and visible, the system keeps choosing this path again and again, each time reinforcing the same lesson. That leverage works. That delay is weakness. That restraint is inefficient. And once that lesson is internalized, escalation stops being a choice. It becomes momentum. Then it accelerates. One action triggers another. Because now there's precedent. Pressure here creates collapse there. Collapse there destabilizes something else. Support structures fail all at once, not gradually. What looked contained spreads sideways. Supply chains reroute, alliances realign, dependencies snap into view. Systems that were never meant to stand alone suddenly have to, and they can't. The pace increases because it has to. Slowing down would mean losing control. So the system moves first, always first. Preemptive, decisive, unforgiving. Every move is justified by the last one. Every escalation is framed as prevention. But prevention of what? Not chaos, not disorder, of losing leverage. And that fear reshapes everything. Strategy, diplomacy, risk tolerance. At this speed, mistakes don't announce themselves. They compound quietly until the next break appears. Closer than the last, here's where you come in. Because this system doesn't stay abstract for long, you experience it as relief, lower pressure, temporary calm, a sense that something difficult has been handled for you. But notice what else changes. Decisions that once felt distant start shaping your daily margins. What you pay, what you postpone, what you quietly stop expecting to improve. You're told this is stability, that the system is working, that the alternative would be worse. And maybe that's true in the short term, but the trade is subtle. You're no longer asked for consent. You're offered outcomes, and when outcomes are delivered efficiently enough, the question of how they're produced fades. That's the danger, because systems that stop needing permission stop explaining themselves. If this feels familiar, if it feels like your choices are shrinking while the decisions feel faster, pay attention. This is the part most people tune out. And it's the part that decides what comes next. Stay with me, because this doesn't stop at borders. Once this system proves it can move markets and restore calm, it doesn't stay local. Others adapt to it, some align with it, some try to shield themselves from it, but everyone adjusts. Because when leverage replaces legitimacy, predictability vanishes. Regions that once balanced themselves through trade start recalculating through security. Energy becomes a bargaining chip again, not a commodity, a weapon. Smaller states feel it first, their margins disappear. Their options narrow. Larger actors respond differently. They hedge. They stockpile. They harden supply lines. All of that increases friction, not immediately, not explosively, but steadily. Every move meant to create calm in one place pushes uncertainty somewhere else. And because the system rewards speed over coordination, there's no forum to slow this down. No referee, just overlapping calculations made under pressure. This is how local stabilization turns into global tension, not through one dramatic failure, through accumulation. And the accumulation hasn't peaked yet. From here, the system only has three possible directions. The first is adjustment. Leverage becomes normalized. Force is routinized. Markets learn to price in coercion as a permanent feature. It works for a while, until every actor starts using the same playbook and stability becomes brittle. The second path is erosion. Institutions hollow out quietly. Rules remain on paper but not in practice. Consent exists, but it's no longer required. People adapt to outcomes without ownership. Systems run faster. Trust thins. This path doesn't collapse. It degrades. The third path is rupture. One miscalculation, one overreach, one moment where leverage meets resistance instead of compliance. At that point, the system has no brakes because it trained itself not to need them. None of these paths announce themselves in advance. They look identical at first. Efficiency, control, relief. The difference only appears later, when reversal becomes impossible. And we are closer to that fork than most people realize, which is why the ending still matters. Here's the part that should make you uneasy. This system doesn't collapse loudly. It doesn't declare failure. It just keeps working until it can't adjust anymore. Because once control replaces consent, there's no easy way back. You can't vote leverage away. You can't negotiate with momentum. And the system doesn't need belief. It only needs compliance. That's why this moment matters more than it feels like it should. Not because of any single decision, but because of what the system has learned about itself. That speed beats debate. That pressure beats process. That stability can be extracted, not built. If that lesson hardens, this isn't a phase. It's a permanent operating model. And permanent models don't correct themselves. They wait for stress, for resistance, for a moment when control stops producing calm and starts producing fracture. We're not at the break yet, but we are past the point where pretending this is temporary still makes sense if you want to understand where this logic leads next and what happens when leverage finally meets its limit. That's where we go from here. Don't look away now.